What is going on, guys? CeeGee here today, and I'm going to keep this little intro short and sweet. And today we're going to be counting down the top 5 games that didn't quite live up to the hype. Obviously, I'm going to have gameplays and a voiceover, so I hope you do enjoy. If you do, smash the thumbs up button, and let's just get straight into the 5th place. So coming in at the 5th and final spot is the sequel to perhaps one of the greatest open world games of all time, that being Fallout 3. 5th place does go to Fallout 4. Now, before you all get pissed at me, at least let me explain. Fallout 4 is by no means a bad game. I've played it through like twice and enjoyed it thoroughly both times, finding new adventures and characters and side quests the more I explored. So it's at the point that you begin to wonder, how did it not live up to the hype? Well, just let me explain quickly. We first saw Fallout 4 in a surprise trailer by Bethesda at what I believe was E3. Don't hold me to that though, as I'm not actually too sure. And it did in fact look rather good. It had a new main character who was looking for a stolen son. A dog was teased in multiple trailers, sort of hinting towards a canine sidekick, which was really nice. And of course, a new vast land for us to explore. But where exactly did the masterpiece of a trailer go wrong?
Man, I don't know who
it all started going downhill when our character started talking. And it sounds odd, but in previous games, Fallout had left out the voice of the playable character, leaving it up to you and your imagination. But in this case, although it was some very good and enjoyable acting, it just took away some of the core integrity of the franchise. Secondly, we discovered that we had controls like a first-person shooter, or an FPS for short. This yet again took away the overall feel of the game and made it feel more like a shooter than a survival exploration game. Third and finally, it boiled down to the release of the game. A lot of fans were quite simply expecting more. Don't get me wrong, it was a gorgeous, fun and enjoyable game, but it just didn't feel like the same old Fallout that we'd known to grow and love. It is also worth noting that Bethesda have said multiple times they have roughly 6 projects on the go, and if one of these was hypothetically a Fallout 5, I'm not sure, would it receive the same level of backlash and criticism, or would it go down a tree? I would definitely be excited for it, as Fallout 4 has been one of my favourite games for the PS4 so far. But yeah, let's just get straight on to number 4. Now, it's of great displeasure that I have to slate this game, as I am a huge fan of the Star Wars universe and a huge fan of this game. But nonetheless, 4th place goes to Star Wars Battlefront. Now, this one is obviously a little bit more understanding rather than Fallout, as it was met with some awful reviews and a whole heap of backlash. But how exactly did the greatest franchise ever get itself into this wild storm of criticism as such? This one's actually quite simply to explain. The first trailers for Battlefront were all cinematic trailers, instantaneously getting people's hopes up about the graphical capability of the game. Now, admittedly, the graphics were incredibly good. Some people even called them photorealistic, if you will. But they weren't like the awesome cinematic trailers that we had. It was just good graphics, but nothing overly special. It did do justice for the Star Wars universe, though, as the portrayal of some of the planets was absolutely gorgeous. Secondly was the serious lack of story. This one even confused me. When I first played the game, my initial reaction to there being literally no story was disappointment. The Star Wars saga as a franchise is built from storytelling and the Skywalker saga. So why there was no story in Battlefront? The question still stands, as many fans are unhappy with EA's explanation. But hey, hopefully the sequel will have a story. Thirdly was the overall progression of the game. This is a difficult one to explain, but I'll do my best. In the multiplayer, leveling up was far too easy to achieve. The amount of XP needed to level up was absolute minimum, which is really disappointing, as after a while it just felt like a pointless feature. And even when you were in the games, you couldn't see other players' levels, making it completely irrelevant. And it really kind of just got annoying after a while. And finally, it all came down to the fact that the game was so heavily watered down. Now, this was definitely the biggest downfall of the game. The game was released about a couple of weeks before the initial release of Star Wars 7, The Force Awakens, or the movie. As a marketing ploy, I think it was just Disney obviously ordering EA and DICE to tone down the game, making it more accessible for the younger and older generations. Now, as good as it sounds and as cool as it is that other people can play this game, it meant that Battlefront had been heavily Disney-fied as such. Now, although Battlefield was a wreck, the sequel comes out later this year, and hopefully it will be better than the last. But it's also just worth noting that EA DICE have spoken about having 3 Star Wars projects in development, and one of which is an open world story game, which is much like The Witcher, but it has the code name GTA Killer, so which is pretty cool. So expect big things from the Star Wars franchise in the near future. In our race for the most disappointing games so far, finishing 3rd place is The Division. When Ubisoft announced the concept for The Division along with 5 minutes of gameplay, fans of the open world genre were literally drooling for this PvE, PvP wild concept. The premise of the game was very simple. Manhattan is run down and essentially abandoned after a flu broke out. Gather supplies to survive, but watch out for other players, as some can help you, but some will literally bend you over, spank you mercilessly, and steal all of your shit. Sounds pretty fun, right? And then came the beta of the game, breaking records left, right, and centre, becoming Xbox's most played beta in the history of the console. Very impressive. So clearly big things were to be expected. The beta was extremely fun and gave everyone a taste of something so fresh and new, and no one really had a bad word to say about it. And then came the release of the game, and oh boy, it was a rocky one. At the very beginning of the game, you create your character and go to register at some desk place. It sounds easy enough, right? Well, you're very wrong, because as this was an open lobby for all players to meet for the first time, which caused some serious problems. Now, if you don't understand this, just imagine 30 to 40 people trying to use one singular laptop. Yeah, it's not good, meaning the game was already off to a very bumpy start. Then there was missions, or more like distractions, to be honest. The missions were simple, boring, and sometimes they were bloody difficult. They were more like excuses for the game, trying to help you get better gear so that you could eventually take on the Dark Zone. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with the game, the Dark Zone was where other players could basically gangbang you and steal your shit. And eventually some time passed and the game got stale very quickly, and it was in a bit of a state. It was now officially Xbox's highest selling game, and that was a bad thing actually, because it was met with a lot of fan backlash. But after a while, Ubisoft released some patches and blah blah blah, and hey, it's now a pretty damn good game. Don't we all love a happy ending, right? Now it's time for Ubisoft's second entry on the list. This time it will take the form of the first Watch Dogs game. Watch Dogs was quite literally meant to be the game that blew GTA off the top spot as king of the open world game, and for a while, admittedly, it looked like it was going to achieve that, playing as one of the greatest hackers ever, Aiden Pierce. It was up to you to stop the government or something like that. I can't really remember. The story was shit, which brings me on to my first reason, the story. The story was so bland and undeniably basic that it was borderline tedious to play. It consisted of repetitive missions, doing the same shitty puzzle over and over and over again, and after a while it just grew very boring and very dull. Now, speaking of boring and dull, let's talk about the map. The goddamn open world that consisted of blue, black and grey. Deadly serious, honestly, I challenge someone to find any colours that are not blue, black or grey. It was always raining and it was miserable, and quite frankly it was just a bit shit. The only way of traversing the open world was driving, which was also a bit shit, or parkour, which was criminally shit. Anyway, moving on, the combat was bare bones basic, which got even more annoying over time. The stealth mechanics were essentially non-existent. I'm really sorry that I'm so biased, but I really do just hate this fucking game. Finally, let's talk about the hacking, the thing that the game was literally based on. We were promised that we would be able to hack anything electronic, literally anything, but when the game was released, Ubisoft hit it with one of their trademark downgrades, making roughly only 30% of the electronics in the game hackable, and this obviously meant bad news for Ubisoft, as they literally had failed to take down GTA spectacularly. Thankfully, Ubisoft learnt their lesson and made Watch Dogs 2 colourful and vibrant, as well as having a group of charismatic teens take the lead of the game, but most importantly, basically everything was hackable, making Watch Dogs 2, in my opinion, one of the best next-gen titles so far. Oh, Mr. Murray. Sean Bloody Murray. The man who promised us the world only to give us the biggest steaming pile of dog turd I think I have ever seen. Let's take a look at the whole story right from the beginning. It all started a very long time ago when a small production company called Hello Games came up with a unique idea of making a game with a 1-to-1 scale of space. Pretty interesting concept that sounds pretty awesome, right? Months, maybe even years passed before we get our first piece of official news on the game, and it wasn't even news. A rumour was doing the rounds that this game titled No Man's Sky would have full-size planets, full-size solar systems, and even full-size galaxies. People shrugged off the rumours because at the time it was literally impossible and no one could do it because of the technology. And then came E3, where this small little team of about 13 people came out and told the world about No Man's Sky. A game with a 1-to-1 scale of space solely based on exploration and story, being able to jump from one solar system to another using full-size spacecrafts capable of light speed. The hype train really began to roll and everyone was getting really, really excited. Then we got our first glimpse of the game and holy shit, it was incredible. This huge open world planet consisting of pinks and blues and reds and every other colour imaginable, with giant dinosaur-like aliens roaming the vast open land. And at this point everyone had basically pre-ordered No Man's Sky. So the release of the game rolls around and evidently it breaks sales records and becomes one of Steam's top 5 highest selling games of all time. But the first day was literally and merely the beginning. After a week of gamers committing their precious hours to the game, everyone, including myself, came to the conclusion that No Man's Sky sucked ass. The planets looked like half-assed piles of clay consisting of browns and dark greens, and colours that looked like nothing like we'd been promised. Aliens were essentially nowhere to be seen, and everything just seemed a bit limp. It was extremely upsetting to see no story either, as it was quite literally a whole galaxy. It could have made for a phenomenal story to be told since the launch. There has only been one major patch, which hasn't even improved the game all that much. It's sad to see a game with such great potential fall so short of expectation, but it did teach gamers around the world a valuable lesson about pre-ordering. Essentially, we all got clickbaited by No Man's Sky, and that's why it comes in at our #1 spot. So guys, do you agree with the list? Let me know in the comments down below, and if you did enjoy, remember to smash the thumbs up button on this video and subscribe if you already haven't, and I'll see you soon with a brand new video. Peace.